Hello and welcome back to the show. We've got James Laughlin again for number 2 in the South Island of New Zealand. James, welcome back to the show.
Oh, I'm so glad to be back, Franco. It's a pleasure to be. Welcome back. I didn't scare you off the first time.
Are you kidding me? I wanted more. The audience is going to want more. So we talked about, actually, before we get into it, maybe remind the audience a little bit about you, why you do what you do, and then we'll get into this juicy topic of purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So, grew up in Northern Ireland initially. For those that don't know a lot about Northern Ireland, it's had its fair share of trouble and division and violence. From a young age, I wanted to get out. What allowed me to get out of the country was my hobby, which was drumming. And I was very fortunate to become a world champion drummer at 13 and then again at 14. And that afforded me the opportunity to go to Canada and then New Zealand to play with other bands that wanted to become the world's best. So, made South Island of New Zealand my home. Went through some pretty major earthquakes here in Christchurch, which shook me up literally, but also shook me up psychologically in terms of what is it that I want to do? Am I doing what I love to do? I was teaching drums, I was helping others become world champions, but I wasn't deeply fulfilled. Something was missing, and that was a sense of purpose. And so I started looking for this thing, purpose. I was like, if when I find the purpose thing, it's going to feel amazing and I'll know it's because it's about me and I'll figure it out. But actually, it took me a lot longer than I had thought it might. And I didn't realize it at the time, but all the things I'd developed throughout the years of, running a retail shop, selling drumming instruments, teaching others to become world champion drummers, building a drumming business, all of these different skills was all around people, all around helping others reach their goals. So I started to realize, okay, I've learned a lot about psychology. I've learned a lot about performance, human behavior, drive, but I still don't understand this purpose thing. So on the pursuit of that, I started talking with corporates. I started talking with professional athletes and teams around what I had done in my past life and sharing it with them. And I realized that I'm starting to get closer to this purpose thing. I'm helping great leaders, great people become the greatest of themselves. They get to define what greatest is. And so that's the field I operate in now. I run mental skills for one of New Zealand's top rugby teams. I coach CEOs, Fortune 500 CEOs, a few PGA athletes. And that's really what takes up my focus and time. And every now and then, when time permits, I'll step in and do executive leadership training in North America, down here in Australia, New Zealand.
Fabulous. Okay, so let's unpackage purpose, right? So when we think of purpose, people have this, I believe, misconception that it has to be this huge thing that's very complex, and once you find it, life becomes easier and you feel you're on track. Let's unpackage that misconception.
Yeah. Well, I think
Right?
first things first is passion is for you, purpose is for others. So that's the first thing I would say. When you're in pursuit of trying to find your purpose, it's not about you, because passions are things for you. And like we talked earlier before we hit record about diving, and that's a passion for you, going to beautiful places and diving. That's not your purpose. Purpose, I would say, arguably, Franco, this podcast fulfills a bit of purpose for you, because this isn't just helping you with the different guests you bring in. You're helping hundreds and thousands of other people to actually go, oh, I can access different insights and wisdom and frameworks. So that's the first thing. Don't go looking for you. Go looking for how you can be a vehicle to help others. And that could be, hey, I can help my dog. I'm getting up out of bed today to go and feed my pet. That is purpose. I'm going to look after my children to the best of my ability and feed them. That is purpose. It could be behind me, you see Nelson Mandela. I'm going to free my country of inequality and injustice. That's purpose.
Can I just step in for a second, James?
Of course.
Um, so I believe that purpose has to start with self,
Mhm.
right? So if we're not on purpose with ourselves, we can't really be on purpose for others. So let me give an example, for me. So my personal purpose is to create a safer world. And the reason is I rarely felt safe as a child, either at home or in school. Ironically, the only place I felt safe was actually on the rugby field, which is kind of weird. But that was because I had a sense of belonging and I knew my mates had my back, which I didn't have in the other two places, right? And unless I can make myself or be emotionally safe with myself, another creating a safe space for me here, I can't do it out there, right? So I ask myself, am I creating a safe space in every interaction that I'm engaging with everyone and everything?
Mm-hmm.
So, can you comment on that when you talked about passion and purpose and how you differentiated the two? Because I want to make sure the audience is clear on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I like what you're saying there in terms of if you want to serve others, because essentially that's what purpose is. It's serving others. You can't serve others until you serve yourself
Correct.
because you have nothing to give,
Right.
right? So you cannot give what you do not have. And I
Correct.
try to really think of that mantra every day. I cannot give what I do not have. And so for me, that is, hey, I want to be a good dad today. When I wake up and leave my bedroom and enter the world of the family home, I want to be a good dad today. But before I do that, I need to meditate, I need to stretch, and I need to journal. So I need to take
Mm,
care of me. So that's
there you
my,
go.
I'm passionate about journaling. I'm passionate about meditating. I look after me so that I can then go and actually deliver on my purpose. Does that kind of resonate with what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what happens is, I believe it's the same thing with values. A lot of folks in companies will have these value words and vision and mission and purpose words. But when you start to really peel back the layers, they're just really words. They're not living them internally. I was watching your interview with Darren again today, the all black way.
Yeah.
You know, we don't join you, you join us. This is the way we do it, right? And you do purpose your way, I do purpose my way, but it's all about service. And if we don't look after ourselves, if we don't serve ourselves first, we can't serve others.
100%. And Nelson Mandela, like I keep going back to him as an example. He was judged by many of his closest people as being very self focused and quite selfish at times. Even some described him as cold towards the people he loved the most. Why? He had to get up early and exercise. He had to go for long 2, 3 hour walks. Why did he have to do that? So that he could deliver on his purpose and serve others at the scale that he did. So I believe you've got to be selfish to be selfless.
Absolutely. So, a lot of folks are grew up or are drilled into them not to be selfish.
Hmm.
So the selfish piece gets in the way of serving others. Let's unpackage that piece because if we're not selfish, we can't be on purpose and serve others. So how do we help? How do you help individuals overcome the paradigm of if I'm being selfish, then I'm looking after me and I can't. So let's unpackage that piece.
Yeah. Well, the thing to think about here is selfish is connected with self love, which is connected with self loathing. And we're all on spectrums there of self love and self loathe. And it could be different things. So, professionally, there might be self love. We might have a lot of self love because we've got a title and we got lots of money and we got people that we lead. But then physically, we might be like, God, well, I'm a little bit overweight than I thought I would be. I'm not as mobile as I could be. I get out of breath going up a hill. Actually, I'm more on the self loathing scale. So, in different areas of our lives, those different columns, we can be in self love or self loathing. Now, for us to develop more self love and to diminish self loathing, we've got to be selfish. We've got to take time. We've got to invest in coaching, whether it's a personal trainer coaching you or buying that book that can mentor your spiritual self or getting that help that you need from your psychologist, whoever it might be. That can be deemed as selfish because you're spending time, money, and resources on you. But if you don't love yourself, then to try and serve others with any form of purpose is going to be skewed and it's going to be strained. It's important to work on self love, diminish the self loathing, and just face your inner self.
So let's talk about um, the challenge of individual purpose and team or group purpose.
Mm-hmm.
How do you combine the two to serve both?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting. In Western society, purpose is seen as this thing that we go after individually to find. I live down here in New Zealand. We've got an incredible culture called Maori, who predate the white settlers by many, many years. And a philosophy that the Maori and Pacific Islanders adopt is that purpose is not about you at all. This is about the whānau or the family. In Hawaii, it's the ohana, right? It's about I do what I do for the betterment of my people. I do what I do for the success of my team. So, like you talked about the former All Blacks coach that I interviewed on the podcast, it was all about whatever we do, it's for the team. It's not about self. Now, we are in a real tough spot because in the Western world, we're told it's your right and responsibility to find your purpose in life. You've got to uncover it before you die and you've got to chase it down. Well, actually, what I think is the way to do it, and I was interviewing our current Prime Minister of New Zealand about 2 or 3 months ago. He put it beautifully, and I was like, I align with that. When there's a purpose or a mission, whether it's your team or your company, that's so inspiring, people can attach their personal meaning to that purpose and mission. Whatever the North Star is here, but they get to go, I care. I grew up in Puerto Rico and I had a single mom. And so for me, that mission, my meaning that I attach to that comes from my upbringing and my beliefs. And they go, bang, let's go. And it means they've got personal purpose attached to that team or family purpose. And that's to me the way we can actually make it work for both parties.
Love it. Great definition and analogy. So, would you agree with the comment that purpose and wound, or our story or our conditioning, are basically the same coin, just different, the opposite sides of it?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, when you look at it, as an individual, you get to pass down two things, one or the other. You get to pass down your wound or you get to pass down your wisdom. And it's one or the other. And so the wisdom comes through seeking something purposeful, helping others, self actualizing. Otherwise, you pass down your wound of regret, of misery, of trauma. And so that to me, the choice is yours.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that we notice in the work that we do with business owning families is they have these emotional traditions that they carry from generations, and it gets passed down from one to the next to the next, and it could be things like, guilt, shame, anger, alcoholism, you name it. You can see it when you put together a genogram. You can actually see the patterns, right? And what I find fascinating is it's the current generation, the 25 to say 40-year-olds that are saying enough is enough of that. We want to change. We want to create new traditions. Now, when I say traditions, there are some really good ones that they have in place as a family too. I'm talking about the negative ones that get in the way of creating the intimacy, the connection, the authenticity that they seek.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you assist, or how do you help teams unpackage their negative traditions, own them, and create new ones?
Yeah, and that to me is an ultimate challenge because traditions are often have, as you say, a very deep emotional anchor. And if we go to a personal level, because that's even easier before we look at a team level. So a tradition could be, at the end of a Friday, hard week's work, I go to the pub, I go to the bar, right? I go and we have 5, 6, 7 pints. That's tradition. That's what my grandfather did, my father did, my uncle did. Let's go to the bar and we go with our mates and we celebrate a big week work. Okay, how's that serving your health? First question. How's that serving your family connection? How's that serving how you feel about your image and your self-love? Okay, if it's all super empowering, great. We don't need to change a thing. That's a great tradition and ritual. Brilliant. If it's holding you back or impacting negatively and it's disempowering on your family, your health, your wealth, your spiritual connection, we have to sit and explore that. Now, that can only be done, Franco, with people who have an open mind and a growth mindset. You can only lead a horse to water. So
Exactly.
it's important to realize that. Now, at a team level, often this comes about when new leadership comes in. So let's say a family business, they're at a point where they started the business, they're in their mid to late 60s, and physically they're struggling, or maybe they just want to start to retire and spend more time with their grandkids. They've got to bring in a CEO. Maybe nobody in the family is ready to step up. They've got to bring in an external CEO. External CEO comes in and goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. I've been working corporate the last 20 years. Like, this can't go. We can't talk to people like that. We can't celebrate in those ways. That tradition is actually costing us our bottom line. Like, we've got to stop. To me, that's where I would step in and talk about, okay, pause, both parties in the room. What's the North Star? The North Star that was set, that remains unchanged. A CEO should never change the North Star. The family business owner, he or she knows what North Star is. Okay, what are the values and standards that come from that? And what is the purpose and mission? Okay, that should inform the behaviors, the rituals, and the traditions. It becomes an easy conversation when you get them out of their heads and onto a page and start talking and pointing at that thing rather than at each other. That to me is the way to do it.
How many people, in your opinion, James, and in the work you've done, in the folk, obviously the folks you've interviewed, maybe a little bit different, are willing to really take a look inside and say, you know what, that little thing there isn't really serving? How many people are really willing to take an honest look at themselves?
Less than 5%. In my personal experience, less than 5% of people are willing to go, I'm sad, or I'm nuts. Like, I can't believe I spoke to people like that. My God, I've got a problem with alcohol. You know what? I've got a problem with food. You know what? I'm just so miserable and getting up and going to that bloody job of mine. Most people would rather numb it than face it. They're worried about what they might see, what they might discover. There's shame, there's guilt, there's fear, there's worry, anxiety. So I would say very few people face themselves, and you don't know there's a shadow there until you start looking for it. But when you find your shadow, you can start to dance with it. You can start to understand it. You can welcome it, and all of a sudden, like Franco, fear of sharks, getting in and swimming with them in the Galapagos. Until you face the shadow, it always has a hold on you. And
Yeah.
everyone's got different fears.
Talking about the shadow, that's going to be the title of our new book.
Really?
It's called Hugging the Ugly, or
I
Hug the
love it.
Ugly, because in my personal case, I'll be vulnerable here. Is my ugly was shame because of what happened to me as a child. So my emotional tradition was shame. I would shame myself. And by the way, listeners, what we do to ourselves, we do to others without even realizing it. So I would shame others without even realizing I was doing it. And until I was able to really unpackage what the shame was, identify it, and ultimately hug it, it didn't have as much power as it had with me on the past. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't go away. When it shows up, I get to go, oh, there you are. Nice to see you again. Let me hug you because you're just looking for some attention. And off you go.
It's a beautiful way to look at it, is embracing it, giving it space to actually exist with you rather than fighting it.
Yeah, because the natural tendency, as you said, is we numb.
Yeah.
Booze, drugs, sex, work, this little device here,
Yeah.
right? Anything to avoid feelings. It amazes me, excuse me, that the bulk of the work that we do with clients is really about them reconnecting with their feelings, their inner child. We spend so much time abandoning ourselves, abandoning our feelings, that we're disconnected. I created a quote. It says, the path to the forest of, and I don't remember. It was good, but I forgot it. I gotta find it. But it was something around, the journey to connecting with the feelings is by meandering through the forest. Sorry, the journey to the meadow of transformation is by meandering through the forest of your feelings.
That's beautiful.
And I like using the word meandering because children meander. And they go, look at this, look at that. I don't think we take enough time as adults to be with our feelings. And I don't believe that we can truly have impact and be purposeful without being connected with our feelings. They go hand in hand.
Agree. 100% agree. I gave up alcohol almost, yes, almost coming up 4 years. And it was the greatest numbing companion I had
Mm.
had for 20 plus years, and used it socially, used it even when I was by myself in the evenings. I used it way too much. But you know what? I didn't really know what I was trying to avoid. I didn't know what I was suppressing. And enough was enough. And honestly, my life, in terms of what I've had to look at, it was ugly to start with. And it was confronting. It was scary. It was hard work. But I'll tell you what, I would never go back. Like, my life has transformed by making that one decision to go, okay, you don't smoke, you don't take drugs, but you do drink a little too much. And people would say, you're not an alcoholic. No, I probably wasn't by medical standards, but I woke up thinking after work, I look forward to a beer. To me, that I was on the
Mm.
spectrum there. Wasn't
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
was hiding something. And I have to say, getting rid of the numbing, it allowed me to explore things with therapy, with journaling, with introspection. I'll never go back.
That's awesome. That's thanks for sharing that. You're talking about alcohol. I've been single for a while, and I was noticing that I was always having a glass of wine with dinner. And what's that about? And then as I started to pass, I need to stop drinking for a while, right? So I went for about 90 days with no alcohol, and I do 30 days of no alcohol every quarter, right? And what I realized was that the wine represented my woman companion,
Yeah.
right? It was like, wow. So if I don't have her, at least I've got 900 of them in my wine cellar. Right? So it's about
Control,
not
right?
feeling lonely. See, and until we take something away, we don't realize what it represents to us.
Mm.
And how it's holding us back. So you talked about that it was hard and challenging. And let's be clear, folks, doing the work is hard. Talk about the difference it's made in you, your children's lives, and those you serve's lives. Because the, the,
Mm.
the benefit is way bigger than the hard work.
Yeah, 100%. Look, if we take alcohol, like if we zoom in on that, I'm Irish, and people would often share the jokes like, if you want a good time, James is Irish. He'll shout you a Guinness. St. Patrick's Day, do it with James. It was kind of like part of my identity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I had to give up my identity. That was the scary part. And people might not want to hang out with me. I might not be as funny. I might not be as cool to be around. That's going to harm me personally, maybe professionally even. So there was all these obstacles. And so I thought, I've tried to knock it on the head before, and I've done 60 days and 90 days, but I always end up coming back. So I thought, it's because I'm short-term focused. And so I got this page out, and I said, why? And again, why is another word for purpose, right? Why do I want to do this? So I said, I want to be the best dad I can to Finn. Finn was only, say, 3 or 4 at the stage. I want to be the best dad. If I become a granddad, I want to be the granddad at 67 wrestling on the beach with my grandkids. I want to look at my body in my 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond and be like, hey, I admire you. You're strong and you're healthy and you are fit. So I wrote this list, right? And I just kept going. And I tried to make lots of it intrinsic, like stuff that means stuff at a soul level, spirit level, family related, service related. Because when it's like, hey, I want a sexy body for the Fiji holiday in 3
Right.
weeks. What's the point? You'll get straight back to it in Fiji. You'll be back on the cocktails. So I wrote this big list. Next day, I stuck to it. I read the list every day for about a month as I was getting into this journey. And then after that, it became part of who I was. And I'll tell you what's been the difference. One, I sleep better. Two, I'm way less reactive. So young kids, as a parent, for those parents that are listening, kids have ways of pushing our buttons,
Of course
as
I
do
do.
team members and staff members. Not drinking has given me so much more space to sit in the pause and reflect and not just react. It's been really powerful. Physically, I'm physically healthier now than I was when I'm 20. Financially, I have this little tracker that says if you were still drinking at the pace you were, this is how much you would have spent. We're sitting at
Wow.
around
That's cool.
$75,000. right? So
Wow, that's
significant amount of
cool.
money on alcohol. So
Wow.
there's so many benefits, and it allowed me. I'll grab this very simple journal, right? This journal, I started doing that as soon as I made the decision to go all in, and that has maximized my business, grown my revenue ridiculously, allowed me to be more creative. So there's been certain things that have opened up since I made the decision to be purpose driven.
So there's a couple of things that I want to highlight here, James. First of all, is identity, right? You know, our greatest addiction is to our identity.
Mhm.
So we fight for it. The ego fights for it, and we think we have to be this identity. And what we forget is that we get to create who we want to be. We get to design our identity. Now, that's the default identity, which is made up of a whole bunch of lies and misconceptions based on the will. We get to say, I want to design who I want to be from this day moving forward, right? You create new beliefs, new truths, and hence new behaviors, and you just become different, right? And then the other piece is why. I don't think we ask ourselves as adults why enough. The young kids are why? As adults, we forget that. The other one we forget is no.
Yeah,
Well, we forget to say no. You know, the young kids go no, no, and as adults, we say yes too much. So I think it's important for the listener to really realize why you may want to consider asking why on what you do, and why this matters more than the alcohol, as an example, or why matters more than hanging on to the family firm for another 10 years for this identity that you think is who you are.
yeah. To what
Because the
end is what I always
cost
ask.
the cost of not asking why is huge, not just
Agree.
financially, emotionally, on relationships. And we tend to forget that the most valuable asset we have are our relationships,
100%.
particularly the one with ourselves.
No, you're absolutely spot on. And that why thing, it's something I've encouraged my son to be that kid that never stops asking. I was like, if your teacher gets frustrated with you, that's on them. But if they're explaining something and you want to know more about it, just ask why. Why are we doing that? Why do we have to sit down for 6 hours? And why can't we be sitting on a beanbag? Or why can't we be standing and learning? Ask the questions. If you feel the feeling, just ask why. I'm with you on that. We can't ask it enough.
So we've come to the top of the show again. We've zipped by it. Is there anything else about purpose that you want to talk that you feel we missed over or didn't pay enough attention to?
Look, I think purpose is a choice. You've got a
Mm.
choice to be purposeful on purpose. So obviously my podcast is Lead on Purpose. What does on purpose mean? It means with intention. So all I would challenge the listener to think about now is when they turn around to pop their 2 feet on the floor as they get out of bed, am I stepping intentionally into the day? Is this what I want to do? Very simple little chart I'll draw here on the screen almost is at the top of the chart is purpose. Down here, sort of thinking of a triangle, down here is priorities. And over here on the other side of the triangle is productivity. The 3 Ps: purpose, priorities, and productivity. So many people to me, when they're speaking to me and wanting to work with me, are stuck in the productivity. I'm too busy. I'm flat out. I'm burnt out. I'm anxious. I'm overwhelmed because they're so focused on just getting stuff done. They're busy being busy. So go back up to your purpose and go, why am I doing the thing? Why am I working in this industry? Why am I holding on to the business? That purpose will uncover and shape your priorities. And if you have 1, 2, or 3 key priorities in your life every day, that will dictate your productivity, where you spend that time. And you will be proud at the end of every day. So if that's something that can serve you, listener, it's a simple little framework, but everything should start with purpose.
I love it. Absolutely love it. James, what a treat to have you on again. Just fabulous.
Absolute pleasure, Franco.
So before we get to, if people want to reach out to you, um, what's one piece of advice that you can offer the listeners? Maybe either how to find their purpose, how to maybe let it find them, how to overcome their fears, whatever piece of advice you want to offer.
There's one thing I want them to think about. Vision precedes victory every single time. Get clear, heighten your awareness, understand what is my life about? decide where you want to take it. Do you have a mortality statement that on your deathbed, what would a loved one read and share with others? People might call it a eulogy statement, mortality memento. But what is that? And drive from that. So vision precedes victory. Get clear on things before you move forward.
Beautiful piece of advice. Beautiful. So, James, if people wanted to find you, how do they find you?
Yeah, a couple of ways depending on where they like to hang out online. So LinkedIn, I'm very active there. So if they search for James Laughlin, spelt Laughlin, Laughlin. Secondly, if they're on Instagram, I put a lot of content on Instagram, a lot of thought leadership. And then also, I'd like to give them a gift. Over the last year, I've interviewed presidents, prime ministers, chief business officers at Google, psychologists from the SAS. And what I've done is I've distilled down to 10 most powerful takeaways from those guests. And it's at jjlaughlin.com/mastery. So if they want to go and check it out, it's a free resource that they can apply to their purposeful lives.
Love it, James. Thank you so much. Always appreciate your generosity, your wisdom, and your candor. It's great to spend time with you. So
Franco,
folks,
thank you.
So folks, as you know, our guests donate their time, their wisdom because they care, right? They want you to be the best possible version of you. We created this show, safe space, so you don't feel alone. To recognize that there's others like you that have similar issues that you do, and this is a community. We're creating a community here for you to feel that you belong and that you matter. So what's important, our request is that you share. Share the show with those that matter to you, those that maybe are searching. Just be generous and share. James, thank you so much again.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime.